involved in Feng Shui since 1997. And since then, she studied under masters from Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and the Philippines. In 1998, with Feng Shui master Paul Lau Tat Lim, she opened the Yin Yang Shop of Harmony here in Manila. So if you have a bit of time, go and visit the shop. I've heard many good things about it. She's featured on many top-rated TV shows and has her own regular TV segment called Feng Shui and You. Today she's going to be talking to us on Feng Shui's selection of commercial sites. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Princess.
Thank you, Tyler. So good afternoon, everyone, and mabuhay. So to our grandmasters, to our masters and international delegates, welcome to Manila. I hope you have the chance to explore and discover why it's more fun in the Philippines. Earlier today, I was with a Romanian lady at the elevator, and she said that she allotted an extra week with her husband to visit Palawan and Boracay. And I'm very happy because those are one of the best beaches in the world. So this afternoon, I'll be discussing using Feng Shui in selecting a commercial site. I'll be giving you some insights into checking the surroundings, planning the space, and tapping the good energies to maximize the potential of the site for commercial success and good luck and prosperity for the business. Think about it. Given two similar businesses in the same area, with things being comparative, such as, let's say, the target market, the price range, the business model, wouldn't you want to have that extra boost of luck, that extra edge that good Feng Shui can bring you? This is, of course, assuming you've done your homework, okay? It's not magic. You have to do your homework, do your market study, plan it well. But of course, having the right and applying the right Feng Shui can bring success and prosperity and smoothness to your business. When we talk about a commercial space or a site, we're talking about a space that will serve a business purpose. This can range from as small as a kiosk to as large as a factory. But for this afternoon's discussion, I've focused mainly on places that will have frequent public access, such as restaurants, hotels, cafes, salons, spa. But commercial space will also cover factories, commissaries, commercial buildings with mixed use. So what I've done is I've divided it into three categories. The first one being a standalone space. The second is a commercial space within a building, but it has its own access. And the third is a commercial space inside a mall or a shopping center. And to better visualize these categories, I've prepared a short video. Oh.
Very slow.
Oh. Is it playing? Please play the video. Sorry. Sorry, some technical. Focus mainly on three kinds of commercial spaces. The first one will be the standalone. Standalone means that it has its own space. It is within its own property or location. Now, the second category of a commercial space would be the commercial space within a block of buildings, but not necessarily inside a mall or a shopping center. So this would be like for strip malls or for commercial spaces that occupy like the ground floor of a building. Now, the third category would be a commercial space within a mall or a shopping center. So this one, of course, obviously you'll have more walk-ins. You'll have less marketing costs because you can always tie up your marketing efforts with that of the mall, especially around the holidays. So each commercial space within its different category will all have its pros and cons. So depending on the type of business that you plan to put, then it would be good to decide what commercial space, what category of this commercial space would best suit your business and your interests. So may I reiterate, it will be good to discern what category of space will best suit your business and your interests. And for that, of course, each space will Each space will have its advantages and disadvantages. Now, for a standalone, obviously you'll have more privacy. So this will be good for businesses whose clientele or target market would like to have privacy and they don't like crowds. A standalone will also give you more flexibility in terms of designing your space and the facade of your building. You also will have more flexible operating hours, but because you're a standalone, of course you'll have less walk-ins. Now for category 2. The advantage of this is that you also have flexibility in terms of your space design, but not so much on the facade because you will belong to a group of buildings. You will also have more flexibility in terms of operating hours. For here, you'll have more foot traffic, not as much as in a mall, which is category 3, but definitely more than category 1, which is a standalone. Because for this category, you'll be part of a building. Now for the third category, I discussed in the video the advantages. But what are the disadvantages? First, this one, you're often subjected to zoning, so you don't have much choice on where to put your space. Also, because there's a certain look that has to be adhered to, so you also don't have much flexibility in terms of your facade look or your space planning. And due to some of the building rules, there will be some restrictions when it comes to plumbing or gas lines, which will affect where you plan to put your restrooms or the kitchen. So, keeping in mind those categories and the pros and cons and how it will help your business, how then do we use Feng Shui to our utmost advantage to bring success and prosperity to the business? Here's another video that will illustrate further the 4 vital considerations. Before we can even go into the discussion of how we use Feng Shui in finding a commercial space, we first have to discuss a very important concept which is called Qi. There are 2 kinds. Qi is like the vital force. It's an energy that's in every living creature or every living thing on this earth. But there is what we call the good energy and the Sha Qi, which is the bad energy. So how do we use Feng Shui to our utmost advantage to ensure the success and prosperity of your business? So when choosing a commercial space, using Feng Shui, you have to remember there are 4 vital considerations that have to be remembered. Number 1 would be the surroundings. So what is the surroundings? When we talk about surroundings, it's actually anything that is visible to the naked eye. It can be like the mountain or the water around, but now in the modern world, it can be the effect of the buildings around you or the roads, the walkways, the pathways. We will assess the surroundings to see how we can tap the good and invite the good energy into our space and deflect or avoid having the Sha Qi or the bad energy affect the space. Second thirdly will be the timing and orientation. First, in terms of timing, we have to understand that buildings or structure, like people, also have birthdays. It's just different for people. The birthday every year changes. Like it's dragon, dog, rat, monkey, every year it changes. Unlike buildings, the birthday of the building will depend on the year it was constructed and completed. But that one will span for every 20 years. So that is what we call the timing. And orientation is the direction, which you can very well get from a lopan or a compass. Now, the third will be the compatibility of the industry and the space to the owner. But if there are a lot of owners, then the compatibility of the space or the industry of the business to the one, the managing director or the active owner. Now, to ascertain whether the industry is compatible to the owner, that would entail doing a complete patser or birth chart analysis of the birthday of that owner. And the last vital consideration will be the layout. So when you plan your layout of your space, you would like to put the crucial areas such as the main entrance door, the cashier, the customer service or the POS system into good prosperous areas. And of course, we'd like to be able to put the restrooms, the stairs, and the other areas in places that will not do so much harm. So that's why layout is also important. But in an ideal scenario, we would always like the best space to have a nice open area in front or like a nice water. That is where you have your main tank, that will have the energy come in. And of course at the back, we'd like to have some support, which can be in the form of a mountain or a building. And then on both left and right, we'd like to also have some support, which is your dragon and your tiger side. So in an ideal space, you can imagine it as something like an armchair, where you have your backrest, you have your armrest, and you have a little footstool in front of you. Next slide, please. So 4 vital considerations. So first is surroundings. As we all know, roads, covered walkways, pathways, overpasses, they are conductors of qi because this movement affects the activity and the flow. So I'll give you some examples of some basic or easy to spot things in the surroundings that you have to be on the lookout for. It is nice, this applies for all categories, 1, 2, or 3. It will be good to be inside the curve of the belly to foster and contain the good energy, rather than being outside the belly, where you are the recipient. It's like a weapon, like a sickle, where you are the recipient of the bad energy, or shachi. So like in this case, if you see, this is the curve, and this is the commercial space. If that's the case, then as much as possible, try to avoid having your key areas, like the entrance door or the cashier, affected by this space, by this curve. So if you see, the entrance is here. Another thing that you have to be on the lookout for is, I'm sure you all know this, in the Manila, we call the T-junction tumbok. So you don't want to be situated at the end of the road or a T-junction because the energy or the qi is too harsh, it's too strong. Although, if you think about it, it gives you very good visibility, but still, this type of scenario is generally avoided. If you really are stuck in that kind of situation, what will you do? Here. Then it will be best to orient your entrance door at an angle to the T-junction to avoid the very strong qi from affecting you and negatively influencing you. And you can put a safety medallion on top of that door. But for category 1 and 2, yes, T-junction is not so good because it's at the end of the road. But if you're at the end of a zebra crossing or a pedestrian crossing, that's not so bad. Why? because it actually gives you very good flexibility, very good visibility, and the chi flow here from the human beings crossing is not so harsh. For category 3, which are spaces within a mall, it's okay to be situated at the end of the hallway or at the receiving end of the up escalator, because the flow of the people flow will also be a softer chi flow, not too harsh. So like in this example, this would have been an ideal space at the receiving end of the up escalator, had it not been for this case where it's also at the receiving end of the curve or the weapon. Another thing to consider, to look out for when we're talking about surroundings, are your neighbors. It's very important to assess what type of business you're planning to put there and what is the business of your neighbors. Why? Because, for example, if you're planning to put up a restaurant, it would not be advisable to put it beside a pet shop because, of course, the smell will be a bad influence and will not be very appetizing to eat there. And in the future, it might even cause you hygiene problems. And also, it's best to avoid being near or beside an area that has an overwhelming yin energy, such as memorial parks, or an overwhelming yang energy, such as a power plant or a very noisy factory. So you also have to suit the space that you're looking at to the type of business that you want to put up. For example, here in Manila, we have what we call the P. Burgos area, which is like a red light district. Definitely, you would not like to put up a kid's store there or like a cupcake store. It has to also suit the neighborhood. Then, when you look at the space, also look at the source of glare from around, especially now the new modern buildings being eco-friendly or green buildings will be clad in glass curtain walls. It's good for them, but not so good for you if you're at the receiving end. Why? Because number one, it's that direct heat or sunlight is going to make your electricity costs go up. But also that direct heat will cause an imbalance of the yin and yang inside your space. As you can see here. Next, when you're looking for a place to put up your business, look around for other possible sources of qi or sha qi, like trees, electric posts, refuse collection areas, water features, waiting sheds, bus stops. For example, if your space or the potential space you're looking at has a big tree encroaching into it, that's not so good because that will affect the growth of your business. Or if it's near like electric lines or cable wires, electric posts, then it's also not so good because number one, it will affect the health of your employees in your business. And obviously, if their health is affected, and it will cause them to have frequent headaches or eye trouble and make them moody and temperamental, that's also not good for your business. Or going back here, but good sources around would be water features, like water fountain or a pond. But these will be good if it's in front of you, rather than beside or behind the space. Some additional pointers when looking for a commercial space is, number one, easy access. You have to have efficient parking facilities and good connection to the transportation sites. Second, the visibility of the space should be good. Third is the topography, and this especially applies to category 1, because you would like to look for a space that has an even ground, or at the very least where the ground in front is lower than the ground at the back. If the surrounding area is higher and your site is sunken or low, then that's not a very good site to consider. The fourth will be the type of soil. This also applies to category 1. If the soil is too sandy or too soft, Or if it's barren land, which means that trees or plants cannot grow, then best you reconsider using that property. And the fifth is the former use of space. For this, you have to be like a detective. You have to investigate and do some research. Because if the space was formerly used for negative activities, you have to understand these activities will leave a latent negative energy there that will be very hard to cleanse, and it will affect the new business that will come in. So, once you've passed number one, which is surroundings, then we have number two, which is the orientation and timing. You have to understand, if a space fulfills the good surroundings around, then yet there have the second consideration. Obviously, all of you know from the talks earlier, as you're dealing with border. So it is okay, this is not use a local. You have to understand that energy is not dynamic, it changes every time, changes from minute to minute. So that's where the flying star comes in, and that is what we call the timing. To make it easier to remember, I always tell my clients, just remember, you have a birthday, and with that comes a zodiac sign. So does your structure, so does your building, and with that comes the year it was completed. For this, there's the time concept of the 3 periods and 9 ages. So now, because we are in 2017, we are in the age of 8. Any structure that was completed after February 4 of 2004 will belong to the age of 8. So timing and orientation. So because we are now in the age of 8, it will be good to consider the relevant stars and where they are useful. So obviously we'd like the wealth star, number 8, the prosperity star, number 9, and the romance star, number 1. I've made a summary, a table here, based on the flying star computations of what orientations will be favorable or good to look for in this age of 8. Next vital consideration, and that will be the compatibility of the industry and the business to the owner. Earlier, Master Petra discussed Patsy and your space. So this one is important because think about it. There's only 24 hours in a day. It doesn't mean, that doesn't mean to stop you from, if you want to go into a business, that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? But just think about it, 24 hours in a day. If you're in an industry or a business that's compatible to you, it's like with this much effort, you get this much reward. If you're in an industry that's not as compatible to you, you can also be successful, but this much effort, this much reward. Which would you rather do? So for the compatibility to the owner, like I said, the proposed business endeavor that you will be putting in that site is best if it's favorable to that owner. And also if the luck or the yin of that owner is at a favorable pillar. For both of this, 1 and 2, you can ascertain this from doing a thorough patsa or pwede or birth chart analysis of that person. And then if possible, it will also be good if the orientation of the space in relation to the owner's birth chart is also good and it jives. For this, you can determine this by finding the qua number of the person. So once you've established what the Qua number is, as I said, if possible, it will be good if all considerations are met and fulfilled. So if you're 1, 3, 4, 9, or 0, then you're an East group. And based on the table that I gave earlier, it will be good to look for spaces that has this orientation, which are favorable orientations for the age of 8 based on the flying star computation. Now for those whose Qua number is 2, 5, 7, or 8, or 6, then they are West group people. So it will be good if they find spaces that has this orientation, which is also in conjunction with the flying star earlier. But please keep in mind, for these two orientations that I was discussing, you also have to remember the border lines. Try to avoid those directions. Yes, it could be, let's say, East 1, but if you fall within the borderline or in between the two sectors, it is best to avoid those areas. And the fourth vital consideration is the layout of the space. Why? Because let's say, given the three considerations you've already fulfilled, surrounding, timing, good timing and orientation, nice surroundings, and the space is compatible to the owner. Don't waste all those three by having a bad layout. So when we talk about the layout of the space, you have to closely examine the shape. Yesterday, Grandmaster Tan Kun Yong was talking about the shape. Of course, you have to keep in mind there has to be that certain aesthetic quality also, and it has to be pleasing to the eye. But generally, a square shape is acceptable. A triangular shape, though, is quite awkward because the points of the triangle will leave a lot of unusable areas. So, for the longest time, geomancers have a general prejudice against triangular shapes. The rectangle is, of course, generally accepted, but yes, it could be boring, so that's where the aesthetics come in from the outside. The oval shape is good, but generally used for like religious buildings, not really too much for commercial centers. Or oval shape is mainly used also for entertainment spaces or structures. And try to avoid those shapes or spaces that are grossly irregular, cross-shaped, or T-shape. Because these awkward spaces will make it very hard to determine and to plan your layout. Plus also, you will end up having, if you're stuck with this number 5, you'll end up having a lot of missing corners. Now, like I was saying earlier, since we are now in the age of 8, we should tap the relevant stars of the period, which is the wealth star, the prosperity star, and the romance star. That especially holds true to the key areas of the proposed business that you are going to put there. Like what? The entrance door, the cashier, and of course the other necessary areas which are not as favorable, like the restroom, the stock room, and all that. You also have to determine where the appropriate place to put these are. So, like for example, you know the star computation. Don't put your cashier where the robbery star is, or number 7. Put your kitchen star is. So you also have to plan the space properly. Now, entrance door is very important, and that's part of the layout. Remember when I was talking about category 1 and category 2? For this is a bit easier to determine and to dictate where you can put your entrance door. But when you're assessing a space that belongs to category 3, before you give your final recommendation, you have to ask the landlord or the lessor, What are the restrictions in terms of facade and how flexible they are when it comes to positioning your entrance door? Because it will be difficult if you've already signed the lease and all of a sudden they will not allow you to change the position of the entrance door. Although, like, I've had a client like that, and they really couldn't ask the owner or the landlord to give in. So then we just removed the door and just made it a whole roll-up curtain. So during the day, there was no door. Okay, so for the positioning of the entrance door, you need to examine the elements that is in front of the intended or the existing entrance. You want to entrance door across a steep gable or a triangular roof. Secondly, you also want to avoid it being across like a dilapidated building or an old messy area or a smelly area. Third is you want to avoid being across like a garbage collection area, an electrical room, a restroom. Another thing for the to and heels will fall. It's too steep and you yourself have difficulty going up to your space. So for the we have a ramp and make sure the slope is gentle and welcoming. When you're assessing, look like I was saying, what it's be situated will be next when you 1 and 2, not too much on 3. So for when you position your windows, it should be or extreme heat, and the lighting should be effective. Should not be a source of glare. If it's uncomfortable, important. But they should be well lit and easily seen. And it should not be too high. or parking block a little far away from too closely to your, it's difficult for you to go into that door. And positioning of mirrors, this is important, especially for shops. They would like to put mirrors all around the aesthetic of the place, and it's also adds to trying to shop for clothes. Inside, outside, the mirror is directly facing your front door or your door, and don't position a mirror behind the cashier. I've heard some here. It's quite important. It's quite common here. They put behind their stove, or they put a mirror behind their cashier. Why? Because they want to double. Realize they're there are four vital considerations: surroundings, what will be a commercial success and what not. So wouldn't you want that extra edge with the right Feng Shui? So thank you very much. It's been an honor and my pleasure. So this is Princess Lim Fernandez. I'm Princess Lim Fernandez. Oh, and may I just add, those who would like to come here